and welcome back to the Bliss Bakery, where you'll get your wholesome slice of life. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Fiona.
So I'm so excited to be joined by Fiona today. As you may know her on Instagram and TikTok as Hey Fiona Wang, and she does a heap of content on food, travel, lifestyle, and her multiple businesses. So thank you so much for coming and joining me.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
I'm excited too. I have a lot of questions for you because it's been so long since we've caught up.
Yeah.
And I feel like a bit of background is going to help the listeners, I guess. It's weird because we haven't seen each other probably 15 years probably.
Yeah. I can't even count how long.
Yeah.
But it's crazy because we technically grew up together.
Yes. And we lived on the same street, 2 houses away.
Yeah.
I used to always come to your house.
Yeah.
Come to ours.
And your grandma's fried rice.
Yeah.
I'll never forget. So crazy. I'll never forget her fried rice.
Dude, I remember actually coming to your house because we would eat chips and I'd be like, yeah,
I don't remember the chips.
Best thing ever. But so much has happened since then. So I feel like, we just went on our own journeys and it'd be really interesting to see what you've been up to since then. Fiona is also the queen of side hustles and spinning up new brands and businesses as a girl boss. On top of her growing social media profiles, she is a co-founder of the Fluid Project and Candid Co.
Yeah.
And today I'm really just excited to dig into that career path, what you've been up to after uni. So yeah, how have things been going? What's life look like after you left uni?
Actually a lot has happened since I left uni. I worked in a luxury car brand for a little while. I actually really loved that. It was really fun. I was doing sponsorships. I was doing partnerships with rugby and stuff like that, which was really cool. And I thought it was going to be my lifelong job that I would never leave, honestly. I was maybe 21 at the time, 20, and I just loved my job. But then we had a redundancy. Yeah, and that's actually how I left my very first dream job that I thought I'd stay forever for. Yeah, so then when I got made redundant from there, I was like, oh wow, what am I going to do now? I thought I was going to stay here for ages, which is so naive of me now that I think of it. But I then ended up joining a software company, logistics software, called WiseTech.
Oh yeah.
So
okay.
yeah, they're pretty big. I think they're probably one of the market leaders, if not the market leader in their space. And there I learned a lot of different stuff. I learned about B2B marketing. I learned about logistics. I learned a lot about systems and how software companies work. And it was a great culture to be in, actually. But I'm not a logistics person and I've never been a software person. So I ended up moving to an agency and I work full-time in an agency doing ads for cars again. So I have this thing with cars. I've just worked in a lot of cars, a lot of head office for cars or branding for cars.
You also love cars because
I
I remember you always would have very nice cars in your driveway.
Yeah, because we could take them home after shoots or if I worked at the company, I'd have a company car for a couple of months and then I'd change. I'm not a car girl in terms of tech, but in terms of appreciating cars and models and brands, I've always been like that.
Right. And that's probably why you also got along really well with my brother because he was really into cars.
And that's why every time I got a new car, like an F-Type, I'll call your brother, hey, come over, check out this car. And he'd be over straight away. There was no I'll be there in an hour, I'll see you tomorrow. It was the next minute he was at my door.
He's I want to drive it right now.
And then he would just go for a drive. Yeah, but I haven't seen your brother in ages. Yeah, I ended up in agency for a couple of years. And then that's when, between WiseTech and my agency was when lockdown happened. And in that time, that's how I got into social media because we had an extra couple of hours in the day. You don't have to commute to work. You don't have to do your makeup. You have to get dressed. It was just really easy.
Yeah.
So I started off in food, doing social media at the time. Yeah, and then that did pretty well. Then when lockdown ended, I was like, well, okay, my life is not just food. So ended up branching into everything lifestyle and travel. That's kind of how I got to end of last year. I met my business partner through social media. So I actually met a lot of people through social media. I'm quite grateful.
Is that Alan?
Yeah, that's Alan. I actually think I just stalked his page one day. And then it was also because of cars. He has this, he has a Supra. And then we started talking about the Supra. And then we went on a car cruise together. That's how we met in person.
Yeah.
So yeah, social media has done a lot for me. So I'm very grateful for social media. And then at the end of last year, we opened Fluid. So this year I've kind of left my full-time job just focusing on Fluid and my agency, and then doing content creation.
Nice.
Yeah, it's like a long answer, but I mean, I've left uni for a while now.
Yeah.
So.
No, well, I
Not
feel like
showing
a
my
lot
age.
happens in. It's weird because once you start going into your passion areas,
Yeah.
it feels like a lot can happen in a very short
Yeah.
amount of time. Whereas, yes, it's been a while since you've left uni, but
Yeah.
you would have spent like a few years in your full-time job.
Yes.
And that would have felt like, you know, it was pretty stable. Things
Yes.
were just happening. Whereas like the last year probably has been like the biggest flurry
No,
of
for
activity.
sure. I think not that I don't learn a lot in full-time job, I actually do. I love working with people. I love everything that happens in the changes in landscape in the company and your roles and stuff like that. But I feel like when you're doing something on your own, because you're in charge and responsible for everything and everything is so much more personal, just things happen a lot quicker. And because I don't have, I've only left my full-time job for about 5 months, but because I don't have the like restriction of having to mentally be somewhere 9 to 5, even if I'm not physically there, it just opens you up to so much. It opens you up to so much that you don't realize when you're kind of preoccupied with something else.
Yeah. And also because it's your thing, you have that ownership, and like you just have this drive to just keep going at it and like spend all the time on it.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because I talked to Martina in the last season as well.
Yes, I see her a lot.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I feel like a lot of people who are on this path now started during COVID. Like that was a huge opportunity for them because you had that time to actually then start thinking about other stuff.
Yeah. I feel like obviously content creation influencers, they've been around for ages. I like to call myself like the COVID wave, because I feel like a whole group of new different kind of creators was like created during COVID, which were the ones like I feel like me and Martina are kind of similar in that sense, because before that I don't know, I can't speak for her, but I never thought I would be a content creator. That was never my plan. But because of lockdown in life, obviously there are challenges all the time, but there's always opportunities in all the challenges. And if you see a lot of the businesses that are thriving, they kind of took hold of downtimes in the economy, or when everyone else was struggling, they found a way to make an opportunity out of that. And I think that's kind of where a lot of people did grab that opportunity during lockdown. And I'm just one of those. Yeah.
There's a silver lining in it, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, let's get started on this as well, because I realized we had this here and then I forgot about it.
Okay.
But actually in my last episode we made them.
No way. Who made them?
Jenny Chu. I don't know.
I haven't
She's
met
in
her.
like the tech industry. So I talked to her in the last episode about, she went on a sabbatical for a year.
Okay.
Yeah, so we just talked about like what she did on her year off.
Oh,
and then
cool.
we made these.
This is so cute. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right.
It's kind of like the Fluid project.
I know. You know what? I might paint that.
Oh, that's,
Yeah. You guys can't see, but there's a cute painting on there. It's like a
Matisse.
pink leaf.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to do that.
All right. So let's start with then your social media journey before we talk about the other things that you've been doing.
Yeah.
How did you decide to start on food as the first thing?
Funny story. So the guy I was dating at the time was a restaurant owner.
Okay.
And so food, firstly, I've always loved food. And I feel like everyone loves food. Like, I don't really think there's anyone who will be like, I don't love food. So that's why food was the easy route. But also because he was a restaurant owner, we had a lot of, I guess, future plans in food, I guess. Like, because he was already in the field, we wanted to grow his page as well. And then whatever business that I wanted to start in the future, I wanted to be able to leverage my food account to help me with that. So it was more just, hey, in the future, I wanted to open my own cafe in some point in my life. And because he already had his own restaurant, it just made sense to do food. When lockdown ended, I kind of realized that even though I love food, it's not really everything that I am. And I'm not really the type of person where I only post on social media just for the views or for the business. Like, I don't see social media as a business. I really see it as my life and sharing my life with people. So that's how I started branching into everything else I do, which is business and travel and relationships. Yeah.
Do you believe though, I guess, in finding like a niche for someone in the beginning when they're like starting off in social media? Is it important to to grow your
I
account?
think it depends on the purpose of why you're starting your social media. So if you say, for example, if I did want to continue the food route or I wanted to open my restaurant, I think it definitely would have been the right way if I stayed in my niche of food. And also niching down is easier to get your target audience because you don't confuse people with what content you're providing. So I do think that if your purpose is something specific, like I want to open my fashion brand or I want to be a fashion influencer or I want to get travel deals, then you should niche down. If you're kind of like me, where you actually just want to build a brand for yourself, where you want to get to know other people, where you want to open your opportunities to different things, then you have to make yourself the niche. And by that, I mean, your content, it has to have a reason for people to watch it. And that reason has to be yourself rather than the value that you're providing. So that might be being really funny. That might be being really interesting, really relatable. It might be sharing personal thoughts and stories, but it's about you rather than being about a specific topic, for example.
Yeah, you have to have a personality, basically.
Yeah. And I think people think, oh, I have to be really funny or I have to be really charismatic, but that's actually not true because you realize there is an audience for everybody. And if you're the calm, well-spoken, chill person, there's an audience for that. If you're the funny person, obviously there's an audience for that. So I think a lot of people feel like, oh, I'm not funny or I'm not really charismatic or loud or extra. I won't do well on social media, but that's actually not true. Yeah.
That's a really interesting insight because I literally feel that way.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm not like the person who banters or like is really loud.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, maybe that's why it's like really hard for social media. Like you have to be someone. But it's really nice to hear that like you can just show who you truly are and then there will be an audience out there.
There is an audience. And I think like because I'm the same, I always feel that way. Like I think we're both relatively chill people.
Yeah.
Like we're never gonna be. I think people get surprised because they meet me in real life. They're like, "Oh, you're similar to what you post on social," and I'm like, "That's because I'm not acting on social, and I'm not a good actor. Like I'd love to be a great actor and funny and everything, but it's just not who I am."
Yeah.
But I've found that on TikTok there are people who are just quite chill when they talk, or they're just quite informative. They just know who their audience is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think people shouldn't be discouraged just because they don't have the typical social media personality. Yeah.
I feel so inspired.
Oh,
yeah, because I actually have been thinking, the reason I asked the niche down question is because I'm someone who I feel like I have just so many different interests at once.
Yes, that's me.
I'm like, I want to be a fashion influencer, but I also want to be the tech girly, but I want to be a travel person.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, no, I'm actually like confusing people like so much by doing that.
Yes.
But those are the things that I truly want to do. Like I don't want to niche down.
Yeah.
Because I want to create that content for myself at the end of the day still.
I agree. I think because I'm exactly the same and I don't have the full answer because I'm still learning about it myself. But what I do know is that even if you don't have a topic niche, you should have a value niche. And so by that, I mean, even though you're doing like fashion, travel, tech, there's normally a value underlying all of that makes you want to share it. And you might just not be aware of it. So if you can deliver your value niche, that becomes your niche. So for example, for me, it's about unlimited fun and like unlimited learning. So everything I post is actually about how to have more fun or how to learn or like enjoy or live your life to the fullest. So even though that's not a specific niche, how should I say? Yeah, it's like a value that underpins everything else. So that becomes the topic in your niche.
And it reflects like who you are as a person, and that's when you become like the brand.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Do you feel like your previous experience working full-time in like in agency, marketing, advertising, that sort of thing helped?
Yes, for sure. I talk about this a lot because I feel like the new generation is all about breaking out of the matrix and working for yourself and I don't want to work a 9 to 5. Not that I'm saying that you can't be really successful as a young person doing your own business. I totally think that's all possible. I just feel like being in agency, being in corporate, when I was younger, it's taught me a lot about how the other people work and to understand their perspective. So I think this one struggle, for example, is I think there's a little bit of misunderstanding between content creators and like brand managers, for example. So sometimes content creators will expect a lot from brand managers. Sometimes brand managers expect a lot from content creators. And there's a little bit of, almost a bit of tension sometimes. But I feel like because I've been on the brand side, I understand the struggles that I had when I was working in a big company, like getting approvals for budget, briefing, and all that kind of stuff. But also as a content creator, I understand how it feels to create content for brands. So working in corporate has given me all of those insights, which allows me to be a better content creator because I understand what brands need better after being on the brand side. So I feel like there's a lot that you learn working 9 to 5 that you don't realize. You might not come home every day being like, I learned this at work today, but subconsciously there is a lot that you do learn. So yeah, it was very helpful.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you feel like the skills that you gain there as well, like just how to build a brand and like those sorts of things are applicable when you're thinking about yourself as the brand?
100%. I feel like I feel like it is.
Yeah.
But like I said, at the time, I don't think it was super obvious. Like at the time, I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm learning that much. But now looking back at it, there's a lot of things that has been drilled into me when I was working in the brand to do those things for the brand that now I'm like, oh, actually I apply this every day. I just don't. It's just not a conscious anymore because it was drilled into me when I was working back then.
Yeah.
And even really simple things like how to structure a brief, how to even script out your videos. A lot of that you learn working with brands when you were doing that at the time. So yeah.
When did this all start feeling like you really had that realization like, hey, I could do this full time. Like I don't actually need to work at my job anymore.
To be honest, I don't know if I ever had that realization. I don't know if I have it now still. Because there are days where I'm like, oh, it would be nice if I just worked at a place and not have to stress about my own business.
Yeah.
And especially when you hear of like holiday leave and then they get free gym membership and they get Uber to places and then they have free lunches at like Canva, for example.
Yeah.
I'm sure Atlassian has great culture as well.
Yeah.
I'm just like, maybe I just want to go back. But I think for me, it's more while you're young, if it's something that you want to do, I'm the type of person where I never believe in what ifs. So I never want to live to a certain age and think, what if I did this instead? So if I have thoughts of doing something, I will just go and try it. And if I fail, then that's fine. You can always go back into a 9 to 5. Yeah.
That's cool. What do you think gave you that mentality though? Because I feel like a lot of people, it's the fear of like starting something. People have ideas, right?
Yeah.
But like they're like, I feel safe right now.
Yeah.
I don't know what will happen if I start this other thing. So like, what helps you break that mentality?
That's a really good question. I think for me, it's about being comfortable with being uncomfortable because I'm also very afraid of a lot of things. But I feel like at some point you have to get out of your comfort zone. So for me, I do a lot of things that make me feel really uncomfortable. For example, if I'm at a conference and they ask for a volunteer, if I don't want to volunteer, then I will volunteer just so that I like force myself out there.
Yeah.
And the thing is, once you take the first step, you'll find that the other steps aren't that difficult because they'll follow through. And it's normally the first step that's really hard. So I think for me, leaving my job was actually really hard because I was like, oh, the stability, oh, the holiday pay, oh, my friends are at work. But after I took that first step and I was like, you know what, it's just time to go. And I handed my, I thought about it on the Friday and then I left on the Monday. But once that happened, everything else happens.
Yeah.
And I really believe in if something does get hard, you always find a way through it. And I just have that trust where I'm like, you know what, I'm scared and I'm terrified and I'm worried that this will happen, but it doesn't matter. I'm just going to take that first step. And then you'll find that most of the time things work out.
Yeah. Yeah, I was saying this actually in a previous conversation where you go through really hard times, but then at the end of it, somehow things will always be okay to some extent. Like, they might not turn out the way you expect them to, but you may actually be happier with the way that the outcome came.
And I know that people always say, oh, trust the process, etc. But I really believe in trusting the process because if I look back on all the times that were hard, if you look back on it now, you're like, oh, but I made it through. Like, I'm here now. I'm not like I'm here now and I'm fine. But at the time, it's like the end of the world and the biggest deal, and it's super stressful and everything.
Yeah.
But if you really look back, all the challenges, you always make it through them. And as people, we develop resistance and strength. So I feel like now I just trust that whatever happens, that I will build the strength and resistance to deal with it then. So I don't stress too much about what if this happens, what if that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like you would have definitely felt that way in your first job, like being made redundant. And then it's kind of like, well, this is the end of the world
100%.
almost, right?
I was like, well, okay, now what? What am I going to do now? I was like super, I was so loyal to that company. I never even took a day off.
Oh, man.
I know, I never took sick days.
Yeah.
Like, I just love my job so much. And then after that, I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You really learn to realize that, I guess, like when you're in a job, the company's never loyal to you as much as you feel to
100%.
it.
It's never that way. And obviously people can be, like, you could have a great manager and everything like that. And I love the people.
Yeah.
But in the end, it's about, you just have to look after yourself in the end.
Yeah. Because I have those thoughts a lot as well, where I'm like, I would never want to leave my role right now because, like, I love the people. I feel this sense of loyalty to the product that we've launched.
Yeah.
But then I suppose at the end of the day, like, sometimes I'm replaceable. Well, I am replaceable. I'm easily replaceable. Like, our founder, like our head of the product, actually ended up moving to a different part of the business because he had to work on some more like AI stuff that had come up.
Yeah.
And at the time I was thinking like, oh man, I couldn't leave this because they need me. But then he left and I was like, wait a minute. Like, he was the most important person 100%. And we are still able to go on.
You know what's really crazy when you say that? It reminds me of something that I saw. Somebody once said, oh, you think the 9 to 5 is the most stable job, but it's actually not more stable than running your own business. And it's because, your role could be changed. You could be made redundant. Lots of things can actually happen in a 9 to 5 that is not as stable as people think it is. So I think it's just more about how you perceive stability and safety, I guess, and being loyal. I still think, because I love working 9 to 5, and I think when I do give it my all. Yeah. But I don't think it's for everybody, but also doing your own business isn't for everybody either. So it's really just about what it is that you want in your life.
You said before actually that you definitely see your social media more as an outlet of like yourself and your interests as opposed to being a business.
Yeah.
But I suppose because you are now almost relying on it as part of your income stream as well, does your perspective have to change a little bit in order to view it as like, hey, like, I have to rely on this for some of my income?
Yes. And I think that's, for me, it's finding the balance between my Instagram is a huge part of my career and my Instagram is where I share things with my friends. As a business, you have to think a little bit more about what your customer and your audience wants to see rather than just what you want to share. Yeah. So, and sometimes it's about just framing it differently. Sometimes you can share the same story or the same message, but framing it in a different sequence of order, like order of sequence, or shaping it so that it's more in the way that they would like to hear it. So I think that is one big thing, but also finding that balance between not losing yourself just for the audience.
Yeah. I feel that so much.
Yeah.
Because you would know, like, I've probably been creating content for like 10 years, whatever it is. But
I've been doing it for ages.
I've always treated it as like my own thing where I don't think about the numbers as much. But then I will every now and then get this like, oh man, I'm not growing.
Yes,
that
of course.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then I'm torn by that because I'm like, wait, but I want to do this for myself, and like I don't want to be dictated by like what people want to see to create what I want to create. Yes. But I really like what you said around, you can create what you create, but frame it in that different way that people want to see it as
100%.
well.
So I feel the same as you. And I'm still on that journey of figuring out what it is that my audience love to see the most because I love sharing so much different stuff. But now I'm more, okay, this is the story I want to tell. How can I tell it so that the audience finds it interesting? Yeah. So it's about framing it for them rather than just changing the story completely.
And what do you think is like the most important thing to succeed in this like pathway around content creation in social media?
I think the most important thing is to provide value because I think once upon a time you could probably post a really nice photo of yourself at the beach and you could get thousands of likes and lots of followers. It's not really that type of landscape anymore, in my opinion. I feel like now if you can create value, it doesn't matter how you look, or even if your face is not in the content or what type of content you provide, you can do well. And providing value could be anything from being educational to being inspiring to being funny to being entertaining. It's more a feeling rather than a thing. So I think every time I say providing value, people are like, oh, like educational content or podcasts or teaching them how to speak English and stuff like that is providing value. But I mean, if you make someone feel less lonely, that's providing value. So I think more about feelings and how my content makes people feel. Do they feel inspired? Do they feel interested? Do they feel happy? And if you make them feel anything, then that's providing value. Yeah.
Sometimes you watch just like vlogs and they're doing nothing and you're like, but the value is that you're feeling chill.
Yeah. And the funniest thing is, see, vlogs is one of those things where I've been kind of studying recently. Yeah. Because I'm like, why do people watch vlogs? Because I never watch vlogs. And I've never been the type of person that watches a 20-minute YouTube vlog or anything. But recently I'm like, okay, there's something that I'm missing because vlogs are big. Like they're huge. People love vlogs and people feel so attached to the vloggers. Yeah. And it's because they're sharing their daily mundane life with you. Or they're sharing their daily habits and you feel connected to them. And it's just doing something with somebody. That's the value that they get. They feel like I'm cleaning while Rachel is like talking, or you know what I mean? I'm eating my food while Fiona's eating her food. And that's the connection and the value that they get.
I think like one of the things that becomes very common as you like make it more serious is the numbers, like likes, followers, all those sorts of things. It must be something that you have to almost worry about at times as well, right? Because it's going to be linked to how much money you make. And then, because I remember talking about this ages ago with Wenji, like long time ago.
I remember her.
Yeah, and she was saying like, you know, it's stressful because one week you could be like getting the most viewed video and all this like money comes in, but then you start thinking, how do I keep that up now? What do I have to do next? And then the next week, like you go down. Yeah. So how do you find that kind of like, I guess, struggle almost with thinking about numbers, but also maintaining like a healthy mindset around it?
Yeah. Numbers is really hard, especially because, for example, when you do sponsored content, the numbers are always lower. But also it's like, but hey, this is what matters. Like I need high numbers on this. Honestly, it is a struggle. I feel like I come back to the mindset where I tell myself, if I make the content really, really good, then the value is just not just in the numbers. So if I can provide the brand with a really great and engaging video that they can use on their own channels, on their own ads, etc., and let's say it performs half as well as my other content, I guess it's just a way of reminding myself that numbers is not everything because it's really hard to control numbers sometimes. But also I do try to review my content, but okay, what could I have done better that maybe would have impacted the numbers? And the one thing that I do a lot is test. So sometimes I will test a hook where I'm talking about myself in the beginning. Other time I'll tell a very similar story, but it's about the audience. And I think if you never test, you never know, and you don't know your audience and you don't know your platform. So for me, I'm okay with having lower numbers so that I can understand my platform a little bit better. Yeah. And I think in the end of the day, you just have to know that you can't get too attached to numbers. Whether, like for me, I'm not too attached to numbers, whether it's like money or collabs or social media, like metrics and stuff, because in the end, numbers go up and down. And if you let that affect you, then in the long run, you can't play this game. Yeah. So I'm not too attached to the numbers. I do my best to make the content that I want and the content that I think is good for the client. Yeah. And then the rest is like, okay, I just leave it up to them. And I post it. I try not to look too much. Yeah.
You should work in growth.
I should.
You could be a product manager because that's what we do at work as well, which is when we're trying to like grow the product adoption, all we do is run a bunch of experiments. It's all about like A/B testing and like trying things and like in the quickest, lowest effort way possible almost, and then comparing the results.
Yeah. It's important, and I think people don't do it enough because they're worried that if I post something a little bit different, it might not do well and that'll look poorly on me and stuff. But in the end, like the way I see it is most people, they're too busy and preoccupied with their own life anyway to really notice all of these tiny things. Yeah. And even if they do notice, there's going to be like people have their own opinions. You can't please everybody. So as long as you're doing what's good for you and what helps you grow and learn, then don't mind everybody else.
I have found that's one of like the thing that I encourage the most when people come like talk on this podcast as well is people can get really concerned about, oh, if I say something, people are going to get mad at me or something like that. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I'm like, you know, no matter what you say, someone's going to get mad at you probably or disagree with you at least.
Yes, 100%.
And so it's better to come in with your own opinion and be open to like changing that opinion if, you know, the discussion happens. But if you don't, you come off just very like robot saying the right things.
100%.
It's not interesting either.
No, and I feel like if I was actually thinking about this the other day, I feel like if you're impressing everybody, then you're actually connecting with nobody because the way I see it is if you make an opinion, there are going to be people who really agree with you and maybe people who don't agree with you. But in the end, you want to be working with or getting to know or connecting with the people who agree with you anyway. And the people who don't agree with you, if they have constructive criticism, then you guys will grow together as well. So in the end, people who agree and disagree, they're not going to have a negative impact on your life, except for the haters, of course, the people who highly disagree and they don't want to have their mindset change. Yeah. Well, then you don't really want to be connected or involved with those people anyway if you can't change their minds or if they can't be open to having a constructive conversation. So that's why now I don't worry too much about what I'm saying as long as I'm true to what I'm saying and I try to not be like insensitive to anybody. But
I guess off that topic a little bit, I was curious what a week looks like in your life because you're so busy.
Oh my God, my weeks are crazy.
I feel like it's just packed all the time.
Yeah, my weeks are very different as well, like every week. A typical week will be Monday and Friday. I'm a fluid, so I will be shooting content, I'll do all the admins, I'll run any classes that I need to and do corporate events and stuff like that. Then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays are normally my content and shooting days. So what I will do usually on Tuesday is I'll shoot a bunch of content or I'll go out to the restaurants or I'll go out to my brands and stuff, shoot everything on Tuesday. And then Wednesday I will work at a random cafe or wherever my meeting is at. So I travel a lot. You'll literally find me at random cafes on random days with my laptop and my gear and everything. Normally I'm editing at a cafe or I'm editing at the library. So that's what happens on Wednesday. In between, I have meetings, sometimes with clients, sometimes with friends, sometimes with potential business people. That's kind of my Tuesday, Wednesday. Thursday, I try to stay at home and do all the admin. And then normally Thursday nights are when a lot of the PR events happen, sometimes on the weekend, but mostly Thursday or Wednesday nights. So once a week, I normally have a PR event, maybe a launch of a new drink or opening of a new restaurant. So I'll go to that. And then weekends, I try to save for like my partner. So that's like date nights, which I normally make content about anyway. So date nights, like time with my partner is normally like half content time. Yeah. But he actually hates it, but he's also very supportive. So that's good of him. So my weekends, I try to spend with family. Yeah.
I know what it's like having a partner who does not like making
I
content.
Know, but like, see, he still bought you this stuff. Like, he's still supportive, you know.
Yeah, you're right.
And that's why it's like very blessed.
Because I see James in your content.
Yeah,
and I'm like, he looks like he's enjoying that.
I know he's not. He enjoys some of it. I can't say he doesn't enjoy all of it. I think it's just because we shoot about 3 times a week. By like time 2 or time 3, he is a bit exhausted. Normally, the first few times he's like, yeah. And then sometimes it takes a few times to get it right. But you know what? He's really patient. So I'm really lucky in that sense. So yeah, that's kind of my normal week. Yeah. And then my busy weeks, I'll not be traveling. So sometimes I'll be in Melbourne looking after the Melbourne shop. Otherwise, I'm overseas in Asia usually. And then on those weeks, it's like really hectic because I'm technically in Asia, but I still have to deliver all the content I would normally in Australia. When I'm in Asia, I like go out from like 10 a.m. to 12 and then I work from like 12 to 2 a.m. And then anything that I can pass on to my team in Australia, all of that kind of comes through at like 12 a.m. or like 1 a.m. like Malaysian time or Vietnamese time, Vietnam time, whatever. Yeah. And then they will work on that. But I think because I'm doing what I enjoy, it doesn't feel like work.
I was going to say, it
Yeah.
sounds so, you must be so tired all the time, but it also sounds like so much fun.
Yeah, I thought I would be really tired, to be
Yeah.
honest. But when I was in high school and uni, I used to be really tired all the time. Like I would sleep 8 hours a day and I would still be really tired. But the last 2 months, I've been sleeping 5 to 6 hours and I'm not tired at all. And I think what I've learned is when you start to gain momentum, it keeps you going. And
You're in like flow state.
yes, you're in flow. And also when you're doing what you love, it actually energizes you more rather than tires you out. So even though I'm working a lot more hours, I feel like really excited. Like I'm really excited to do this. Then I'm really excited to go back and shoot more content. I'm really excited to like play with my new camera. I'm just really excited to do all of that. So I don't actually want to go to sleep. And the first thing I do when I wake up, I'm like, I'm going to check my emails.
Oh my God.
I get excited.
Must be nice.
I know. So I feel like when people are tired, it's not because they're doing too much. It's because they're not doing enough of the right thing. Yeah. So I think I used to be like, oh, I would not study or work after 9 p.m., etc., etc. And I always felt tired because I'm too busy or I'm working too much. But actually, it's just because I'm not working on the right thing for me. Yeah.
Like spending too much time on stuff that drains you versus things that energizes you.
Yeah.
What have been the things you've been most excited about in terms of content that you've produced then? Like what have been your proudest moments?
Oh, that's so hard.
Or actually, maybe what's the first moment where like something went viral and you like woke up?
I think the first moment when something went viral was when I did like a funny prank video on my boyfriend. So I did the sushi prank where you put the wasabi under the sushi.
The fish thing.
The fish, yeah. And then I think that did 3 million
Oh my God.
or something like that across just Insta and TikTok and then a bit more on YouTube. And that's when I was like, oh, but I think I was really proud of that because it's content typically outside of what I would normally do. So I get really proud every time I do something different from the usual. So back then I always just did like food recommendations. And then this is the first time I did like a pranking my boyfriend video. And then it did really well. Same when we did like our first dance video across Japan. It's just like every time I do something that I don't normally do, I feel like that's an achievement because like you unlock another, treasure in a game, right? Like, oh, I unlocked a new skill or I learned something new or I created something different. I think that's what drives me the most. So yeah, all of those moments, they're not crazy like pieces of content or anything, but just because they were so different, I'm really proud of those.
And they're not necessarily like the most popular videos either, are they? Like
sometimes they're not. Yeah, sometimes they're not, but you just feel so proud that you made that video.
Yeah.
And I think content creation, it's a form of art as well. I think people overlook how hard it is to make a video. And you get a lot of things. I actually read a lot of hate comments online. I find it really interesting to understand what haters think and why they like comment the things that they do. And I was watching this other one where they're like, can't believe I'm working like 40 hours a week doing this. I don't remember what it was. And then some 20-year-old girl posts a video of herself and she's making more than me or whatever. And I think about that and I'm like, it's actually not easy to put yourself out there and film a 10-second, whether it's a dance video, whether it's a vlog, and make it look really natural. And that's actually the hard thing. But the fact that she makes it look so natural that you think she put zero effort in it, that's the skill right there. So even like I'm trying to learn how to do that myself, I feel like people don't give enough credit to how hard content creation can be. And even when I look at photographers, like the photos that look really beautiful, they put a lot of work into editing and photoshopping and the layers. I don't even know to make that. And it is a form of art. And I think we forget about that sometimes. So yeah.
And it's kind of like the content creators that made it big, like there's been a path of just they need a lot of confidence and there's a lot of cringe along the way.
100%.
I was just watching TikToks last night about the tube girl thing.
Oh my God, I've been watching the tube girl every day.
And I'm like, I can't imagine myself doing that. But she has so much confidence to just do that. And I'm like, dude, that's crazy.
Honestly, so I've been stuck on this tube thing in the last 3 days. The reason because like a lot of other creators are doing it, right? And then I go straight to the comments because it's so divided between people being like, wish I had your confidence, slay girl, and like, this is so cringe, this generation is messed up. And I'm just like, it's so interesting how polarized the opinions are. But at the same time, I'm like, do you know how hard it is to do that on a train? Like, it's
I
really
couldn't.
hard.
Like,
I can't do that.
yeah.
Yeah.
My body would just paralyze myself. It
And
would be so
even
awkward.
if you were confident, like, that's not a shot you get on the first go because the
Yeah.
wind, the people, like the angles, you can't even see yourself. Like, there's so many factors that go into that. Even if you were confident enough, you probably had to shoot it a couple of times. So yeah, I feel you. I think the interesting thing is people think success happens overnight. But the truth is, I was reading this book. I never read, but I was reading this book. And it was saying you can hammer the same spot 100 times and nothing could happen. But on the 101 time, the rock could split into two. That's how I see a lot of people who have done really well, or like content creators who have made it big. You may think, oh, they grew famous overnight because they got viral last night and then they became this big thing tomorrow or next month. But they've probably been like hammering away for years or like trying and learning and speaking and like all of that we don't see.
Yeah.
And that I feel like that goes for everything. Yeah.
And I feel like you're validated when people are watching you and like that you have followers. But along that journey, it's just like, it's hard.
It is hard.
Because, I don't know, like tell me about, you know, when you were first starting out, did you find like, were you worried people were going to find you cringe or like, oh, who does she think she is?
Oh,
she's got like 10 followers.
Even now, honestly, it's super funny because I think somebody once made a comment being, because recently I've been speaking at a lot of events and somebody made a comment to somebody else and they were like, oh, who does she think is? She's not even that big. And you always feel, obviously when people say things like that, it is definitely a bit like, it adds to your imposter syndrome.
Yeah, it
adds to your imposter syndrome. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at the same time, you can't get anywhere if you get so worried about what everybody else thinks. And so I think it's really funny because they always say to manifest, you just have to think you're already there, right? And I think a lot of the big creators, they have that belief in them in some way or another. And that's how they do get there because they're like, I don't care if I'm being cringe. This is what I want to do. This is how I'm going to get there. And they're the ones who do it. So they're the ones who get there. Whereas if we sit back and we don't do anything, we don't get there. Yeah.
Well, I think it's a journey though to like getting past that imposter syndrome. And maybe people never get past it fully, but they just push themselves. Like you're putting yourself in uncomfortable positions.
Girl, I never. I always have imposter syndrome. Like I always feel like not ready yet, not good enough. But even if you feel that, you just have to do it. Yeah. And when you're there, you have to make it work, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
In terms of your most popular videos then, like the ones that have gone viral, have you seen patterns in terms of like what you did well that caused that?
Yes. So I would say my most popular videos are couple videos or travel videos, especially to popular areas like Japan.
Yeah.
They did really well. And what I find that works is having two things in all of your videos. The first one is something that they can learn from it. So even if I'm doing a travel video, it's not just a vlog. It's actually, I teach them something like, oh, did you know this about Japan? Or did you know this about Vietnam? Or this is a fact about the history. And I'll weave that in. And then the second thing is actually to be entertaining in the way that, by entertaining, I mean just be relatable in some way. You know what I mean? So the funniest thing is one of my most viral videos was a video that I thought would never be viral, which was me being like, hey, you know the first thing I do when I land in Asia is I get a haircut? Like that was my video. And I was like, I don't know what the point of this video is. And when I made it, I'm like, I don't know if anyone will watch this. But then it did like 100K on Instagram. Yeah. And it's just because it's relatable because like all the Asians, when they go back home, they get their haircuts. And they're like, yeah, I do this too. I love to do that when I'm in China. And it's just either being relatable but weaving in something educational in there. That has always helped with all of my content.
Value.
Yeah. Value. Yeah.
Nice. Then I want to move on to talking about your side hustles as well because you've got so much going on in your life. Tell me about them all. Like what are all the different side hustle things that you're doing?
Okay, I will... I wouldn't say Fluid is a side hustle anymore. Fluid is really the main hustle now.
Well, this episode's going to be titled Turn Your Side Hustle into Your Main Hustle.
Yeah, okay. Well, Fluid did start as a side hustle because I was working full time. So it is more of a main hustle now. I wouldn't say I work full-time hours in there, but definitely like half of a full-time job, if not like very close. My other things that I am doing is I'm trying to expand my travel into more of a community for travel so that I can share itineraries, I can share, and it's more a place where I can collect all my videos, because right now if you go on my page, there's Japan, Vietnam, Malaysia, and then my life and business and everything's just scattered. So I'm trying to build that into more of a collected website and blog where people can go there and they can find everything about Japan here and everything about Vietnam here, and build that community so that when people going to Vietnam, they can be like, hey, is anyone in this area? And then people in the community can be, oh, I'm here, and they can make friends and everything like that. I'm still working out on the name, to be honest. I feel like starting a name for your brand or a business is the hardest thing ever.
I know.
It's so hard. I've been working on the name for months and I haven't found anything I like. So I'm still working on the name for that. So that's coming.
Yeah. In my first episode of this podcast, I talked about like how we named it. And it was so painful.
It's hard,
because I had so many ideas, and then I'd test them with Lucas only.
Yeah.
And then he'd be like, nah, I don't get it. At the end, he was just like, yeah, just go with that.
Names are so hard.
It's so hard.
So I'm still working on the name for that. And then I have Candid Co, which is my UGC agency. That's probably my biggest side hustle. Essentially there, what we have is like a group of organic creators, and they don't have to be really big influencers or huge TikTok creators. A lot of them are just people who love creating videos and they love putting themselves out there. So what we do is we work with brands if they have products that they want to create ads for. I'm kind of the team. I'll find the right people for you, and then we will say deliver a package of 5 videos or 10 videos or whatever it is that the brand wants.
What's UGC?
UGC stands for user generated content. So it's a bit different to influencer content. Essentially, it's the content that looks like it's the customer using the product and reviewing it, and a lot of the times it is real customers being like, hey, this is how I actually feel about this, or people who have used the product, if not loyal customers, people who have used the product, and they create content about it. So for example, with this, it will be like, oh wow, I did this painting today with Rachel, these are the colors that I got, this was really fun, and that'll be a video of itself.
Right.
And what you would do is you would supply that to the brand, and the brand will post it on their social media, or they post it as the reviews, or they will maybe run ads with it.
So does the agency come to you, or do you send it to the company?
So the company will come to me, and then I'll find the right talent for it. Yeah, and then I'll brief my talent, and then the talent will actually create the content. Yeah. Sometimes I am the talent if I'm the right person. A lot of the times it's actually my team. Yeah. And then we will then send across whatever the agreed deliverables are. I love working in that sense because I feel like firstly you give young and new talent a chance to make some money from doing what they love to do, but also it's good for the brands as well. Yeah, because it's very organic marketing for them.
Aim to be more authentic than influencer marketing. Yeah.
Then the third thing I have is I still have my little music school. Since I had from
piano teaching
for 15 years old. Yeah. I don't remember.
We used to always hear piano playing.
So my first ever job was I started teaching piano when I was 16. I had this really old garage. Do you remember my garage?
Yeah.
It literally looks like this. It was just like poorly painted on the outside, and we painted it in like butterflies. It literally looks like this actually. And then I would have kids in my garage and I would teach them piano. And it's been 15 years now. And it's still running.
You're still doing that.
I still teach, not a lot though. I have teachers that teach for me mostly. Yeah. But I still teach 6 to 8 students a week.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's a considerable amount of time still. That's like
it is.
6 8 hours.
Yeah, 6 hours. When I'm traveling, it does become a bit difficult. So I really just have the customers that are just really flexible with their schedule time, because if you're really serious about, I want to get into like this music school, or I want to get into grade A by next year, I do recommend them to go with my teachers. But if they're a bit more lax and they're younger, or they're like, oh, well, we're already in our year 12, we're happy to extend our piano to next year, etc., then I still have those students. So I think in the long term, I still want to do something in education, because I'm very passionate about education, and I feel like kids are our like future, right? That's kind of why my music school is still here.
That's cool. Yeah. I had no idea.
Yeah.
That is so cool. Like you stuck at it as well. Maybe I'll just dive into, I had 2 of the main ones, which was like Fluid Project and Candid Co. Probably dive more into Fluid Project, because that's had a huge journey in the last year, right? Yeah. So can you share actually like, how did that idea come about? And what is Fluid Project for people who
that's
don't
a
know?
great question. So Fluid Project is what I like to call the ultimate creative space. So it's essentially a space where literally everyone, kids, adults, even older people, young people, they all come and they can just get creative and just get childish. Because I think the thing is, as we get older, we have so many responsibilities, and I feel like we start to limit ourselves through all of the expectations that we have to experience as we get older. So Fluid is kind of a place where you can be childish, you can use glitter, you can paint, you can do sketching, like just a creative space for people to get really creative and unleash that inner child of theirs. We started in Sydney in a warehouse in Homebush. That's where we opened last year in September. And then now we have a store, a really beautiful store in Melbourne. Sydney is still really cool as like a warehousey space, and we do international kits to everybody who can't come to our stores. And hoping to expand like a physical store globally very soon. So that's our plans. How it started is quite interesting because fluid art has always been around, and so has things like brick bears and collectibles and really cool figurines and stuff like that. The thing that we kind of notice is that, well, I don't drink, so that really eliminates a lot of my nighttime activities in Sydney, especially if it's like cold. Like where would you go in Sydney? You know what I mean? Yeah. And then I also love going out on date nights and experiences, and I did paint and sip, which was really fun. But I felt like my painting wasn't that good and I didn't know what to do with it afterwards. And then we saw, I think it was a lot of stuff on TikTok in China, like Douyin. Yeah. They were doing really similar stuff. They were just pouring paint on all these kinds of really cool things on canvases. And I'm like, hey, we should bring something like that to Australia where you have an experience like that. And actually I did experience something very similar in Australia on a very small scale. There was a small... It's kind of like in someone's house kind of vibes where they did painting on bears. And that was like, oh my God, we could make this into something really big and more than just painting and fluid bears, but more about actually the experience. So we wanted to make it more of like a party experiences, corporate experiences, group and couple dating and all that kind of stuff. So,
and because it's fluid, it's like easier to get pretty, right?
Correct. And because it's fluid, like you don't actually have to be good at art. Yeah, you can't. And so that's when we're like, oh, well, let's try this out and let's see how it goes. Funny thing is, Alan went to a really similar experience, but he didn't enjoy his experience. And he was like, oh, I could have made that experience so much better, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, well, like, why don't we try it? Like, let's do it ourselves. And then the next day we got a warehouse. It was really random.
That is crazy.
Yeah. Like, we got a warehouse 2 days after we talked about this.
Yeah.
And then, it just kind of happened from there.
Yeah. I actually feel like for me, thinking about the idea of executing on a physical kind of product / store, like where you actually rent a space and like you have to set up and there's almost like renovating that goes on in it to set it up, is just like mind-blowing to me compared to just building like a software product. That to me is like, oh, that's easy.
That's hard too. I don't know. I'm on the other end. So I think what you guys are doing are hard. But I feel like, honestly, in the beginning, we were like, should we just do it as a pop-up thing? But then we're like, you know what? If we're going to try and do this, we want to go all out. And so we chose somewhere relatively safe. So Homebush, not super high rent, like if we were in the city or in a shopping center. Yeah. And then we just had faith that we would know how to market it so people would come to us, to be honest. That was the scariest part. Yeah. But yeah, we were really lucky. We found a space we really liked. We decked it out in a couple of days and then we opened in 2 weeks. It was crazy.
Yeah. That's quick as well. Yeah. But like you said, it's a little bit experimental as well, right? Yeah. Part of it's like figuring out what works, but just trying things very quickly.
100%. And we're always changing, to be honest, especially when we launched DIY kits, because we had no idea what the take-up of that would be like, nor do we know how long it would take us to pack a box and if we'd make any mistakes. And things like the post people being really not delicate with our packages meant we had broken packages and stuff like that. So it's a lot of trial and error, but if you don't try, you don't learn those lessons. So yeah.
Do you think that's one of the most important things to the success of that journey?
Yes. I also think a lot of people overthink everything. So when they start a business, they think about, oh, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? What if this happens? What if that happens? or even when they're creating content, they're like, this isn't perfect enough, it can't go out. But the thing is, people can get really paralyzed by perfection or by overthinking. Whereas the good thing about me and Alan is kind of like, if we have an idea, if we're like 70, 80% there, we'll just do it. And then the rest is a learning experience. I feel like that has helped us with our journey a lot. Yeah.
I think that one of the things that people say a lot in startups and stuff like that makes it work is do things that don't scale initially, right? It's like what you mentioned around the perfectionism and overthinking, like the future of if we get like 1,000 customers, how are we going to manage it then? It's kind of like start with the thing that doesn't scale. And then once you get that kind of popularity, it's then figuring out how it scales. Did you take that approach, or is that different for a physical product?
No, we actually didn't take that approach. We actually did keep scalability in mind because we had the intention of going international. I would say, I think if we started off a bit smaller, it would have been easier.
Yeah.
Because there were a lot of times where we spent a lot of money on things that we had planned for the future and then it didn't quite go that way. And so we're like, oh, we kind of thought too big. Like we should have just been like more of a family run little business in the beginning. Right. But in saying that though, I think because we had that mindset in the beginning, now it's easier for us to scale. And by scalability, I'm thinking more about processes.
Okay.
So how can we create the kits so that we could send out a lot in one go? So all of that we did think about in the beginning. But again, you think you know something until something happens and it goes wrong. And then you're like, well, I didn't think this part through. So there was still a lot of learnings, even though we did try to have scalability in mind. Yeah.
When I did KO Box a long time ago now, I actually, for the first like product that when I shipped the first month, I bought like 1,000 boxes, like put together boxes, because I was like, it's going to be the cheapest way possible to get many, many things.
Yeah.
And each box would have been like 4 cents.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's how I'm going to get my costs down. And then I decided not to actually just go like buy 100 or even just 10 boxes and they'd be like $1 each.
Yeah.
Because I was like, that's going to be way too expensive.
Yes.
It was the biggest fuck up.
Okay, so on this point, I would agree with you because when we planned for scalability, it was all in processes. Yeah. It was not in anything physical.
Stock.
Because when we launched Fluid, actually we started with, I think, 200 stock. Because we're like, what if this doesn't go well? So exact same thing.
Yeah.
But we had the opposite problem where when we started launching it, we were overwhelmed with demand. So we had to close the shop for 2 weeks because we didn't have enough stock. But I still would have done it that way over getting 1,000 stock. Because in my very first business, which I did was like cake toppers and personally designed birthday cards and funny cards, I did the same thing as you. I was like, I'm going to get 1,000 of each thing. So I have still to this day in my garage, I have 1,000, and they're branded as well. So I can't even do anything with it. But I have 1,000 branded packaging bags. I have 1,000 branded boxes for those packages.
Yeah.
And like 1,000 of each cake topper that's just sitting in my house. And I don't know what to do about it because I just stopped focusing on that business.
I had the exact same experience with makeup. Like I just had so many masks, like branded boxes. Yeah. And then I actually changed to just like masks. So like the actual product changed. And then I had bought like a different type of packaging for it. And I was like, well, what am I going to do with these boxes now? Yeah. So I still just like use boxes sometimes if I like, need to wrap presents and stuff.
No, 100%. Were they branded as well?
Yeah.
Oh, I feel you. So yeah, I think that's what I mean by like testing. You start off with a small amount first to test. And then as you get bigger, you can grow that. But in terms of thinking about scalability, think about the process so that when it gets busy, it's scalable. Yeah. Yeah.
How involved are you now in the Fluid project? Because you mentioned Monday,
Friday.
Yeah, and like how much of it do you feel like you can kind of step back and like focus on other things now because it is at that stage?
Yeah. I would say I'm not very involved in the day-to-day. So yesterday my team were asking me about, I think, one of the deliveries. And I was like, well, I don't know. So yeah, day-to-day operations, I'm actually not very across that. I am very involved in the marketing and the branding. I'm very involved in the people. So hiring people, making sure everyone's okay. I'm involved in that. And I'm quite involved in kind of what's next for the business. So we get a lot of franchise requests. So I will manage a lot of that as well, but mostly content creation and marketing. So I would say 2 to 3 days a week I'm working on Fluid, but not on the day-to-day operations. And we have, for example, our branch in Melbourne, our manager there is really fantastic. So I'm almost completely hands-off in Melbourne. I'd say maybe just a couple days a month I would work on Melbourne.
Yeah.
But most of the time, like, Melbourne is like the dream.
Yeah.
The baby where you just work on a couple of days and they're doing fine on their own and they're not even in your city, and you just have full trust in the team over there. Not that I don't have trust in the team in Sydney. It's just that in Sydney we don't have a manager. So it's a little bit different. So me and Alan are more hands-on. But in Melbourne, because we have a manager, that's kind of like where you want all of your businesses to be.
Yeah. And you're there a couple of days a month and you're actually just like working in the store, right? Like that must be really fun as well.
It is fun. I actually love working at Fluid. Yeah.
It's kind of like the experience of like everyone wants to just, you know, quit their job and start a cafe because the idea of it is like, oh, I just get to kind of like work in the cafe and experience like the customers and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I feel like you've hit the dream there.
Yes, I have. But honestly, I don't know. I think cafe is different because the idea of food sounds much more stressful to me. But I think in terms of that sentiment, yes, because every time I'm working, I feel so happy. You meet the customers, you see what they love, what they feel, and it is a fun place to be as well. So I feel like in that sense, it is, the dream has been achieved.
You guys have been growing different, like in your product ranges, all right? I saw very recently you guys were doing like deco on phone cases or cases?
Actually everything.
Okay.
So funny thing is, I think when people think of Fluid, they think of fluid art.
Yes.
But the reason we started Fluid is because we wanted the business to be fluid. So that name actually doesn't stand for fluid art. It stands for we will continue to change with whatever our customers want. So fluid art was the easy one to start with because it was really aligned with our brand and because it wasn't super pop. Like, I don't think there was anything in Australia that was big on fluid art at the time. I think there are lots of DIY studios that would have done it, but no one that specialized in fluid art. So let's start in with fluid art. But we did know that at some point people would get bored of fluid art and we would start moving to different things. So we have a lot of different models that people come back to paint, but also we're launching diamond bears. So that's where you put...
Oh, yes.
You put diamonds on. Honestly, that one is so therapeutic. But like, you need to have patience, or like you need to... Like, I really enjoy doing it, but takes much more patience and time than it does with the fluid art.
I just did a paint by numbers, which is a similar experience because
that sounds fun.
it was
but
crazy.
It's like huge, right?
It was
and
so
there's like
detailed.
10 billion colors. Yeah.
And like sometimes I'd be like, this is really therapeutic. And then sometimes I'd be like, I'm in jail. Like, I want this to be over.
Yeah.
So it teaches you patience.
Yeah, but the diamond bear it's just so beautiful and you can get really creative, and it's very... Like, some people want a really clean kind of art. Yeah. Diamond bear is like the perfect one. And it's just really aesthetic, like in your home. Like, girls love it.
Is it a DIY kit or do people come back?
Yeah, they can come and do it in our store as well.
That's cool.
And then we launch once a month different activities. So we partner with different art brands. So last month we did sketching. And then this month we're doing the Deco Den. And we're doing it with high tea. So we just want it to be fun and different for people all the time. And we want to give people a reason to come back as well, because they have such a great time on the first time, but they're not going to be like, I'm going to make another bear. So sometimes they'll come back, they'll make another model, or they'll do a different type of art. They might do a canvas. They might do the crystal bears, diamond bears. So we want to just keep it interesting for people. Yeah.
I love anything to do with crafts. I'm like a huge craft person. So
you need to come. We'll do something cute for you guys. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
So much stuff happening in this whole space. And you guys have grown a lot as well. So I think the thing is, I wanted to touch on, like, a lot of people have ideas, and like a lot of people, I think they have these things where they're like, this would be really cool. I want to start a business like this. Yeah. But then everyone is scared of executing on it. So what advice, I guess, would you give to those people who are like hesitant to start on something?
Yeah. I actually think this is probably the biggest problem for most people. And it's interesting because I met a lot of people and they're really talented. They know what they're doing. They have great ideas. And then every time they come with me, I'm like, yeah, do it. That sounds great. But then most of the time you notice they don't follow through. I don't know. I guess I realize it's a much bigger it's like a limiting belief that holds a lot of people back. So I think the first thing that I would say is think about why you're doing that thing or why you want to do that thing. Because I think a lot of people, they have a great idea and then they're like, oh, I want to do this. And then they get afraid to start and then they kind of lose momentum. And I think it's because they don't have a strong enough why. So for me, because I really, really love activities, I love date art activities, I love exploring new experiences, that was a very strong why for me. And even if my business didn't blow up, if my first 100 customers had a really good time, that would have been enough for me, to be really honest. But that's because my why was very strong. And so if you have a strong why, it kind of keeps you going. And for me, I feel like if you don't know what your why is, that's probably the first thing that you need to figure out. And then once you figure out your why, it's how can I make my why so pleasurable is not the right word, but like how can I make the why so strong that I really want to reach it? And how can I make the why so strong that if I don't achieve it, I will like suffer. Do you know what I mean? So it's increasing the suffer, like how much you'll suffer if you don't get it, and increasing how amazing it'll be when you do get it.
Yeah.
And if you drill that into yourself, then I think it creates a motivation for you to overcome the limiting beliefs. Then the second thing is, I always believe in if you do the first step, all the other steps will come.
Yeah,
so
it's the first step.
It's the first step. So even if you're like, I want to start this and I'm too scared, if you just pay for the domain, you're like, oh, I paid for the domain. Now let me go design it now. Let me go and then it'll start to come. But if you don't take that first step, then it's really easy to lose momentum and then it just never happens. So with this travel thing, that's why I just started the website. I don't even have a name. And now I realize, oh my God, I have to change my domain name because I don't like the name I started with. But at least now I have the page and now it's going to happen because I've already taken that first step and my domain is sitting there every day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And you're paying for it.
And you're paying for it. So I'm going to do it now.
Yeah, that's a great, it's like literally make the payment, just take that one action. You don't know where it's going to lead, but at least you've done something and it unlocks everything.
Yeah. And most of the time, the first step is not a huge risk or investment. Normally it's something like reaching out to the right person or it's just opening a business name or opening a domain or posting your first video. Normally the first step is not where the big investment is. It's just where the scary moment is, I feel like. Yeah.
I think a lot of people also don't want to start their ideas because they're scared that it might not be as great as they think it is. Like even just sharing it out to other people or like taking that first step. In your brain, the idea is really awesome. It's like $1 million idea, but then you don't want to almost hear of like the potential failure that it could become.
I know. I think, you know what? I think the scariest thing is that our biggest limiting belief holding us back from everything is always fear. And the fear always comes down to like fear of failure or fear of like not being loved or being kind of marginalized by society, I guess. Like if people hate you or if your family think you're cringe or I think it's really just that. Like when it comes down to it, it's just fear of either of those two things. But I think once you're aware of that and you kind of can overcome that fear, you realize that if you fail in your first business idea, that's kind of fine. If anything, it's good because I massively failed in my first business, in my opinion. I failed in my first business idea. And now I have boxes of stock sitting at home, right? But I wouldn't have learned how to do my next one better if I didn't do that first one. And so I think the strongest and most successful people, they're not the smartest or the richest or they didn't start off any better. They just don't mind failing. Because if you fail 10 times, come on, like you have to get it right on the 11th or 15th or 20th. Do you know what I mean?
Failure and persistence.
It's part of life. And I think the minute that we stop being afraid to fail, that's when it opens us to like unlimited opportunities. I
like that. You have, I guess like you've tried so many different things as well, right?
Yeah, I have.
And you have a lot of also successful things going on right now.
I do.
So how do you balance all of that time? Like,
I think prioritizing is really important. I would say my life is not very structured right now, which is, I would like to have more structure. It's just really hard when like I decide to travel maybe 2 weeks before I fly or when collaborations and brands reach out to you maybe 1 week before something is due. So it's quite hard. But what I will always do is I will have priorities. And I also make sure I have enough rest time to work time, because rest time helps you do your work better. And you can function so much more productively when you have enough rest. And rest isn't always sleep. Like people think, oh, like I can't sleep at night. I'm like, yeah, but you don't have to just sleep to rest. You can meditate, you can do yoga, you can listen to music. Like to me, all of that is still rest as well. So I feel like because I have enough rest time, I'm much more productive. And then if I prioritize and I'm productive, you can juggle a lot more. And I think people think, I do come back to limiting beliefs, because I think people have so many things that they tell themselves which aren't true, but because someone has once told us that when we were young, or because like that's what society says, then we get very confused with all the noise, and so we don't really know what to do. But actually I really believe that you do know what you need to do. Like your body knows, like if you're tired, that's a sign to go to sleep. If you're hungry, you should go and eat. But because we're told, you need to sleep at this time, or you need to eat this much protein, or you can't eat more than this, because we listen to all of this outside stuff, we get kind of confused. But for me, I just listen to my body. I'm like, if I'm tired today, I'm going to go to sleep. And then you wake up more refreshed and you can do more work. And if you're doing the things that you love, you'll be able to balance it all. But if you're doing things that you don't like, then you won't be able to multitask because you're like distracted by other things. So yeah, my feedback is actually listen to your own body. Yeah, that's how I managed to make it through everything. And then of course you have to prioritize.
I like that, because it's not your cookie cutter advice. It's something different.
Yeah, because I think everyone, you know what's really funny? Like I tried to lose weight for years. I was like counting calories. I was doing all the workouts. I was eating protein, blah, 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 blah. And then one day I was like, forget it. I didn't care about losing weight anymore. I'm just going to eat when I want to, eat whenever I want to, sleep when I want to. And I lost like so much weight. And I was like, it's just because your body actually knows. And then people say to me, oh, but then if I do whatever I want, I'm just going to sit in bed all day. But have you really sat in bed all day? Like if you sit in bed all day, you get bored. You want to go outside. And if you eat all day, the next day you're going to be like, I kind of want something healthy. Your body knows. So just don't get so distracted. Just listen to your body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm getting a lot of life advice from you today. All right. So then what's next for you on the horizon? What are you excited about in the next year?
I haven't shared this with anyone. So whoever is listening, you guys will be the first to know. I want to do, so under my travel brand, I want to branch it out more from just travel to more culture and bridging gaps between all the cultures internationally. And one thing I really want to do is expand into international education and kind of help and give back a bit more to the other countries that need it a bit more, but specifically more in education. So I'm hoping to run events around the world where we gather communities, we have fun. So my first one, oh my God, I really haven't said this to anybody. Our first one, I'm trying.
Dude, maybe you'll have announced it before this comes out.
I don't know. I'm trying to do like a fun activity where we can get in like 50 or 100 people, and then everything that we do on that day is going to be like fundraising for like education in Vietnam or in Malaysia.
Lovely.
Yeah, so that's what I really want to do there.
Yeah. I will be cheering you on
Thank you.
on your journey. I know you're always doing lots of things, and I think it is really nice to see how far you've come, like from knowing each other since we were little to, just the paths that you've gone through now. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, and I feel like, I think it's just more about trying different things. Like you said, I've tried a lot of random things. Like I've worked in tech, I've worked in cars, I've done music. I think the more you do, the more you know what's right for you, what's not right for you. So yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thanks for having me. I had a really fun time. I don't know if you guys can see, but I made a little flower.
I finished mine like
yours is
10
very
minutes
cute.
in.
Yeah, yours is much cuter than mine.
Thanks everyone for listening. Remember to tune in every Wednesday for the sugar, the spice, and everything that's nice in life with the Bliss Bakery. And we will see you next time.
Thank you. Bye.